Hi everybody, welcome to our almost, sometimes daily chat. Dragonman's mid-year exam started today, so a hard 2 weeks ahead because the young man is very enthusiastic in the beginning, but towards the end we have to beg, plead and bribe him to study. Typical boy, typical teenager. Okay, now today we're going to have a mixed bag of topics, but I want to have my say about King Charles's visit to Canada before I move on. You know, I watch all the shit going down. I watch what is written in the media, and I sometimes wonder what happened to the media and even humanity, because sometimes I think there is a virus worse than the one we had a lockdown for. Sometimes I think there's something in the air affecting the brain. The media is now using President Trump's throwaway comment about making Canada America's 51st state to promote the monarchy in Canada. Honestly, you have to be pretty dumb to take that BS seriously. I'm really flabbergasted. We saw Trump on Apprentice years ago. He was president before, and what kind of person has not, as yet, picked up on his personality and MO? Are you telling me there are people who really believe that President Trump is serious and is willing to go to war with Canada or somehow execute a coup on Canada? Really? Go watch that video again in which he actually made that remark, and watch it again and again and again, okay, until you actually get it. Obviously, he is throwing spaghetti or shit, take your pick, against the wall, but he's not an idiot and knows what it will take, and he knows that although they share boundaries, America and Canada are two completely different countries. President Trump is 78 years old. He's not 2 or 3 years old. He knows where his country's boundaries are. The fact that the media and other powers are using this as promotion of the monarchy and King Charles is not only gaslighting, but it is dumb and potentially politically dangerous. Our local news, News 24, screams in the headlines, King Charles highlights Canadian self-determination as Trump looms. Looms where? Listen, ANC and ANC-driven media, President Trump had already weighed you alongside many others and found you lightweight and lacking. So don't make it worse. Just shh, hush, hush. Keep quiet. Do your own thing. But while I'm hushing and shushing my own government, I rather enjoy the musings of others, because if you hesitate and think for a moment, it is actually almost irritatingly funny. Okay, so listen to my point of view before you get angry. I spent 3 months in Canada, and although my children are already Canadian and absolutely love the country and love being there, after 3 months, I still could not get the hang of it. It is stunningly beautiful and way, way, way safer than South Africa. But the identity of the people was actually hard to grasp. In one place, the wokery, the liberalism was eye-wateringly in your face. And around the corner, the Mennonites with their carts in heavy traffic. I'm just using this as a very obvious example, and I'm not going to go into it any further, but I would certainly say that Canada has a very complex, yet still an equally sophisticated identity. Yet, this past week, its new Liberal Prime Minister invited an old monarch from across the ocean to open its parliament and to supposedly provide backup and support in Canada's supposed resistance to Donald Trump's so-called threat. Now, boys and girls, a man by the name of Martin Kettle wrote something like this or similar, and when I read his article, I laughed so hard that I started coughing again. Yet the idea that a British monarch has not opened the Canadian Parliament in nearly 50 years, and that Charles was invited by a Liberal government, was already a little funny. But to think that Carney thought that having Charles open Parliament would send a signal about its sovereignty to President Trump and the United States is hilarious and naive, to say the least. Does Carney or anyone else actually think President Trump gives a shit? He may like the monarchy, and he definitely loved Queen Elizabeth II, and he has a lot of respect for William. But he is likely rolling with laughter about all of this. Unlike the King's speech to Parliament in Britain, his speech, or a good part of it, was scripted by the Government of Canada. But unlike in the United Kingdom, the King was also allowed to speak on his own behalf, and the King went ahead to endorse Canadian national pride, pluralism, global trade, and so on and so on. But he then went and ended the speech by saying, "The true North is indeed strong and free." Now, nobody knows whether this speech and the King's own words was also sent to Keir Starmer and Britain's own government for approval. But regardless of whether it was done or not, and just a side note, it should have been done, because we are talking political matters here, and not about Sandringham's gardens, okay? But regardless of whether it was sent to Keir Starmer and the British government, it was clearly the King's own decision to travel to Canada and make this speech in person. Charles is clearly showing his own political leanings and bias. Remember, in Britain, he supported the UK Union over national separatists. He took Starmer and Rayner to a housing development in Cornwall. He made visits to EU capitals. He very openly hosted Zelensky days after Zelensky's run-in with President Trump. It is my personal opinion, I'm not going to put this on anyone else, that the King's cancer is, in a way, his saving grace, because people have empathy with him due to his health condition and are therefore allowing or ignoring Charles's political opinions, interferences and gaffes. His illness likely also the reason why he's not being pushed harder on the Harry and Meghan issue. For fear of your wrath and anger, I have not said it outright, but I'm going to anyway. In my opinion, now that the King is over the worst shock of the cancer diagnosis and he's kicked chemo, he is maybe, in my opinion, possibly exploiting his health condition. There, I said it. It may be true or not, but it is still my opinion. That is how I feel, and that is what I think. And I base my thought on past behavior. You can feel free to disagree, but just keep it civil. I also think that for Charles to continue to criticize President Trump, even if more by undercover deeds, actions, and so-called hints is indeed very dangerous and risky for the United Kingdom. My dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying so hard to separate the nonsense from the hardcore truth, but as much as the BS in my own country concerns me, the utter BS and gaslighting in Britain concerns me as well. Remember, it's a mere 2 generations ago that my family were also British and Scottish, and generations and time or whatnot. I still have friends and family there, and I adore the true British. Of course, I'm in no position to tell anyone what to think or feel. I can only inform and share my opinion. Okay, guys, so the next one will be on a lighter note. So until then, please take good care of yourselves. Bye.